Hello, and welcome to We Run Over 50, where it's our mission to inspire more people over 50 to become runners over 50. My name is Ernest, and as you might have guessed, I am a runner over 50. If you want to learn more about me and my bona fides when it comes to running, I've included a link to a get to know me video in the description below. I didn't include that info here because I want to get straight into myth busting for you runners over 50, and especially for you folks over 50 who are on the fence about running. Before going any further though, I need to make clear that I'm not a doctor, and the content on this channel is for informational and educational purposes only, and does not constitute medical advice. Always consult with a qualified healthcare professional before starting any new fitness program. That's really important. Okay, so if you're in or over your 50s, I can all but guarantee that you've read or been told that you should not run, that running wears out your joints, and that over time, running causes arthritis in your knees and hips. You may have even heard this from your general practitioner. Well, as I said, I'm not a doctor, but I can tell you that the science on this is clear. Quoting an article here from Harvard Health, mounting evidence suggests that running does not cause osteoarthritis or any other joint disease. The article cites a handful of high-quality studies, such as one from 2017, which found that recreational runners had lower rates of hip and knee osteoarthritis compared with non-runners. One from 2018, which found that the rate of hip or knee arthritis among 675 marathon runners was half the rate expected within the US population. And a meta-analysis from 2022, which found no evidence of significant harm to the cartilage lining the knee joints on MRIs taken just after running. The author of the Harvard Health piece notes that these are just a few of the published medical studies on the subject, and that overall, research suggests that running is an unlikely cause of arthritis and might even be protective. For anyone who wants to dive into the details, I've included links to the Harvard Health article I've been quoting, as well as the associated studies in the description for this video. The author concludes with the following. If you don't like to run, that's fine. Try to find forms of exercise that you enjoy more. Just don't base your decision or excuse for not running on the idea that it will ruin your joints. Now, I noted just a minute ago that I'm not a doctor, but the author of this piece I've been citing, Robert H. Schmerling, was a practicing rheumatologist for over 30 years, served as clinical chief of the Division of Rheumatology at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, and is the senior faculty editor for Harvard Health Publishing, which is to say he has qualifications up the wazoo, and is up on the latest research around the causes of age-related and degenerative joint diseases. So, contrary to the conventional wisdom that running is bad for your joints, the science tells us that it can actually be beneficial. Now, I mentioned a minute ago that if you're in or over your 50s, you might have even been advised by your doctor to stop running. A study published last year in the journal Sports Health found that, and I'm quoting the lead author of the study here, Dr. Matthew J. Hartwell, 1 in 4 people have received a recommendation by their physician to reduce their running volume, and for those with arthritis, nearly 50% of runners were told by their physicians to stop running altogether, signifying that despite growing knowledge that running and being active can be healthy for your joints, there is continued dogma in the healthcare community that patients should stop running to avoid wearing out their cartilage. So it's not just us lay people who have this backwards. Plenty of experts still adhere to the dogma, to use Dr. Hartwell's word, around running, quote unquote, wearing out your joints. So if you take one thing away from this video, please make it this. Multiple high-quality studies have shown that recreational running is not associated with an increased risk of knee or hip osteoarthritis and may actually improve joint health. All right, but what if you already have osteoarthritis? Well, an analysis of data from a huge long-term study called the Osteoarthritis Initiative found that among individuals 50 years old and older with knee OA, self-selected running is associated with improved knee pain and not with worsening knee pain or radiographically defined structural progression. Therefore, self-selected running need not be discouraged in people with knee OA. Okay, to sum up, Running does not cause osteoarthritis, and if you already have knee OA, it does not make it worse. Instead, the research suggests that running can actually improve your knee pain. So if anyone tells you that running is bad for your knees, potentially even your physician, please set them straight, or just send them a link to this video. Together, we can put this myth to rest for good. Now, it's important to note that runners can and do suffer injuries, including to the knee and hip. But these occur across all age groups. They're by no means exclusive to older populations. And research tells us that these running-related injuries are most often rooted in training errors. In other words, trying to do too much, too soon, too fast, and too little with too little rest. These are known in the running community as the terrible twos, as in TOO, not TWO. And we'll tackle ways to avoid the terrible twos in future episodes. Okay, so running doesn't wear out your joints. That's a reason not to not run. But why, as a person over 50, should you run? Well, I'll give you 3 reasons. First, it'll help you live longer. It's long been known that running confers significant cardiovascular benefits, and a rigorous study published in the Journal of the American College of Cardiology in 2014 very clearly quantified those benefits. It showed that compared to non-runners, runners had a 30% lower risk of death from any cause. And if you looked specifically at cardiovascular causes of death, like heart attack or stroke, runners had a 45% lower risk of death compared to non-runners. 45%, that's huge. And the volume of running associated with these benefits was not enormous. The research showed that running less than 51 minutes per week was sufficient to reduce the risk of mortality compared to not running. Doing the math really quickly, if you were to say split that 51 minutes across 3 days, that would translate to 3 runs per week, each lasting only 17 minutes. Now, a question that I'm guessing at least some of you are asking at this point is, what about walking? Well, the New York Times published an article focused on just that question a couple of years back. It's titled Running versus Walking, Which is Better for Lasting Health? And the gist of it is, while taking regular walks has been shown to reduce the risk of many health problems, when it comes to the key outcome of longevity, several studies have found that running can be more than twice as effective. It's also far more time efficient. For example, the Times article cited a 2011 study out of Taiwan, which found that adults who regularly did 25-minute runs reduced their risk of dying for any reason over the subsequent 8 years by 35%. To see similar benefits, walkers had to be out there for at least 105 minutes. So 4 times longer for the same longevity benefits you gain from running. The research is clear. Running will reduce your risk of dying for any reason, and particularly for cardiovascular reasons. And these longevity gains will come in a fraction of the time as compared to walking. Okay, so that's, I think, a very compelling reason for people over 50 to not just exercise, but specifically to run. My second reason is a little broader, and it has to do with habits. First, a bit of context. In 2012, Random House published a book titled The Power of Habit. It was written by a New York Times journalist named Charles Duhigg, and it would quickly become a phenomenon, selling in the millions of copies. And its popularity has been so durable that Random House recently republished the book in a 10th anniversary edition. It's a book that struck me like a lightning bolt when I first read it well over a decade ago, and one I still think about often, particularly a concept Duhigg describes as keystone habits. Referencing the book here, Duhigg wrote that some habits matter more than others in remaking businesses and lives. These are keystone habits, and they can influence how people work, eat, play, live, spend, and communicate. Keystone habits start a process that over time transforms everything. In other words, Duhigg found that some habits have a disproportionate impact because they set off a cascade of other habits. And one very powerful keystone habit that Duhigg uncovered was exercise. Citing the book again here, Duhigg wrote, "Studies from the past decade have shown that when people start habitually exercising, they start changing other unrelated patterns in their lives, often unknowingly. Typically, people who exercise start eating better and becoming more productive at work. They smoke less and show more patience with colleagues and family. They use their credit cards less frequently and say they feel less stressed. It's not completely clear why, but for many people, exercise is a keystone habit that triggers widespread change. Now, all of this is about exercise more broadly, but I've absolutely found it to be the case with running specifically. I'll give you one personal example. After maintaining what I think would be fair to describe as a low activity lifestyle throughout my 40s, last April, not long before I hit 51, I started to run consistently 4 times per week. And within a couple of months, I noticed that I was eating differently. For one, I was eating more at breakfast and less at dinner. And most importantly, my wife and I were eating out far less often. As Charles Duhigg noted, people who start habitually exercising start changing other patterns in their lives, often unknowingly. And that was the case with my diet. I didn't consciously change it, but once I adopted running as a habit, it sparked a cascade of other positive changes. And in the 10 months since I started running habitually, I've lost a little over 20 pounds without even trying. Weight loss wasn't the reason I started running. I'm also more active beyond running, which may be because physically I just feel better than I have in over a decade. The inflammatory achiness I often felt in my low back and shoulders, and that I assumed was an unavoidable consequence of life after 50, has gone away, which shows that it wasn't a function of aging, but of inactivity. So running is a keystone habit with the power to spark widespread positive change across many facets of your life, even after 50. And that's why it's my second reason for trying to inspire you as a person over 50 to start running. And that brings me to my third and final reason to run over 50, which is a blending of the first two. Some of you may already be familiar with the term health span. It was coined by 2 gerontologists, John Rowe and Robert Kahn, back in 1987, but only entered the mainstream lexicon in recent years. Put simply, lifespan is a measure of the number of years we live. Very straightforward. By contrast, health span is the number of years we're able to live in good health, active and free from significant chronic disease or disability. At first blush, we might assume that those two things are very nearly the same. But research published in the Journal of the American Medical Association just over a year ago identified a significant and growing gap between lifespan and health span around the world. To be more precise, the study found that people outlive their good health by an average of 9.6 years, almost a decade. And when they looked specifically at the US, they found an even wider health span lifespan gap of 12 years. I'm guessing most of us aren't particularly interested in living longer if over a decade of our adult years is spent in poor health, coping with chronic and potentially debilitating disease. So how do we reduce or even eliminate this gap between lifespan and health span? UCLA Health published a nice, concise summary of the research around this last June. And they boiled it down to what they describe as 7 healthy habits, kind of a nice inversion of the 7 deadly sins. Now, the UCLA team didn't rank these habits, but I'm going to, at least the first one, based on guidance from other experts, including Dr. Luigi Ferrucci, a National Institutes of Health geriatrician who oversees research on aging and health. Citing Dr. Ferrucci here, he says, if I had to rank behaviors in terms of priority, I'd say that exercise is the most important thing associated with living longer and healthier. Exercise is especially important for lengthening active life expectancy, which is life without disease and without physical and mental disability. So, regular exercise is the first of the 7 healthy habits. And we already talked earlier about why running in particular is such a great way for older adults to get that exercise. After exercise, the 6 remaining healthy habits are to eat healthy, stop smoking, and if you drink, do so in moderation, manage your stress, sleep well, stay socially connected, and get regular checkups to track key health measures, including cholesterol, blood pressure, and blood sugar. So, pretty straightforward. I'm going to come back now to a quote I shared earlier to help explain the concept of keystone habits. I cited a passage from the book, The Power of Habit, which noted that typically people who exercise start eating better and becoming more productive at work. They smoke less and show more patience with colleagues and family. They use their credit cards less frequently and say they feel less stressed. It's not completely clear why, but for many people, exercise is a keystone habit that triggers widespread change. And if you'll recall, I shared my own experience where after adopting running as a habit, I unintentionally began to eat better, something that I've maintained for the better part of a year now. I've never been a smoker or a drinker, so no changes there, but running has also absolutely helped me manage my stress and sleep better. Of course, I'm just a sample of one, but my personal experience very much aligns with the broader research here. So exercise, and in particular running, can be a catalyst for adopting nearly all of the 7 healthy habits without even making a conscious effort. Put another way, just focus on making running a habit in your life, and odds are that better eating, cessation of smoking, lower stress, and better sleep will just come along for the ride, because running is a keystone habit. As for the 2 remaining habits that have been found to extend health span, getting regular checkups is pretty straightforward. Just put a recurring reminder in your calendar app. So the last thing I want to touch on is the recommendation to stay socially connected. If you're in your 50s or older, you're probably already aware of the importance of social connection. In a recent survey conducted by AARP, 74% of adults 50 and up cited in-person socializing as the key to their happiness. On the flip side, numerous studies have shown that a lack of social connection can increase the risk of everything from dementia to heart disease to premature death. But even though we know these things, research also tells us that people over 50 are more likely to be socially isolated. So, what does that have to do with running? Well, what was in our youth a largely solitary sport is now deeply social. To give you a little background here, we're in the middle of a running boom. More people are running today than ever before. This boom was sparked by the pandemic lockdowns, but only continues to expand, and many observers credit the durability of this growth to the rise of run clubs and social running. As Hugh Brasher, event director for the London Marathon, explained to The Guardian, "We used to have to go into the office 5 days a week, and we socialized through work. But with work from home, a lot of that cohesion has gone, and therefore it needs to be replaced." As to why running in particular has so effectively filled that social gap, the New York Times offered a perspective in a related story titled "The Rise of Run Clubs." Quoting that piece here, run club founders say the groups are popular because running facilitates deep connections. Unlike in most social settings, members see one another exhausted, struggling, and sweaty, a vulnerable combination. The piece then cites Matt Horrocks, co-founder of the Your Friendly Runners Club in London, who explains that in that more vulnerable context, we found that people bond really, really quickly. To put a number on this, Strava, a very popular exercise tracking platform, reported a 59% increase in running club participation in 2024. Their research also found that making social connections was the lead motivator for people to exercise. All this is to say that running today is not only a powerful catalyst for physical health, but for connection and social health as well. And there are run clubs for all shapes, sizes, genders, and generations. Google can certainly help you find groups near you, but your local running store can also be a great resource. Many stores host their own runs while also serving as hubs for other run clubs in their communities. And in my experience, the staff at local running shops will be more than happy to help you find a group that matches what you're looking for in terms of experience, level, pace, distance, what have you. So running checks off 6 of the 7 healthy habits that will close that health span, lifespan gap. Not only extending the number of years we have, but extending the number of years we have as healthy, active, independent people in our communities. To quote a wise man, actually an orthopedic surgeon named Ronald Rook, "I don't run to add days to my life, I run to add life to my days." That's my third and final reason to run over 50. All right, I know I've covered a lot of ground, so I'll end with a quick recap of the key points. First, the notion that running is bad for your knees and will cause arthritis is absolutely a myth that's been busted repeatedly by numerous high-quality studies. In fact, research has shown that the arthritis rate of active marathoners is significantly lower than that of the general US population. And even amongst people who already have knee osteoarthritis, running has been shown to actually improve knee pain with no contribution to structural progression of the disease. I'm going to reprise the quote from Dr. Robert H. Schmerling that I shared at the start of this video. If you don't like to run, that's fine. Try to find forms of exercise that you enjoy more. Just don't base your decision or excuse for not running on the idea that it will ruin your joints. Now, as to why I believe you should, as a person over 50, at the very least give running a shot, I offer 3 reasons. First, study after study has shown that running can significantly increase lifespan, with gains achieved in much less time as compared to walking. Second, psychological studies have shown that habitual exercise, including running, is a keystone habit that intrinsically triggers a cascade of other good habits. In short, make running a habit, and odds are that you'll start eating better, sleeping better, and better managing your stress without even consciously trying. And finally, these 2 benefits, increased lifespan and the cascade of other good habits that accompany running, stack up to give you significantly increased health span. I didn't mention this earlier, but a legendary Stanford study published in 2008 actually put a number against this. The study followed nearly 1,000 runners and non-runners for 21 years. All participants were in their 50s at the start of the study, meaning that they were in their 70s and 80s or had passed away by the end of the study. The researchers found that while both the runners and non-runners became more disabled after 21 years of aging, the runners' initial disability came on 16 years later than it did for the non-runners. So a huge increase in health span for people in their 50s associated specifically with running, proving that it not only adds years to your life, running adds life to your years, and in a big way. All right, so I hope this has been at least somewhat persuasive for you. I've cited a bunch of studies, and the body of evidence supporting the benefits of running for older adults is growing by the day. But what really compelled me to create this video and this channel wasn't the science. It was my own experience rediscovering running after 50. It's changed my life in so many positive ways, physical and psychological, and I want more people over 50 to experience those benefits in their own lives. It's said that the most important step in any journey is the first, and if you're a person over 50 who's been on the fence about running, I hope I've inspired you to take that first step. Or maybe you're not over 50, but know someone who is and might appreciate this video. If so, please do share it with them. Sharing and liking will let YouTube know that there is an audience of, let's say mature folks out there who are hungry for content like this. And if you want to see more from us, please do subscribe, or better yet, join our community of like-minded people over 50 who are becoming runners over 50 over on Patreon. I've included a link in the description below. Thanks so much for watching, and happy running.